What if I told you the ground beneath your feet wasn't always right here? That the very continents we call home were once stitched together like pieces of a giant, ancient puzzle. Picture this: a world where the jagged cliffs of Scotland brushed against the Appalachian Mountains, where the deserts of Africa stretched into the lush forests of South America. This wasn't some alternate reality or science fiction. It was our planet, 300 million years ago, when all the land on Earth was fused into one colossal supercontinent, Pangaea. Today, we're going on a journey, not just across space, but through deep time. We'll trace the footsteps of dinosaurs that roamed a world without oceans dividing them, uncover the hidden clues buried in rocks and fossils that tell this incredible story, and explore how the slow, relentless dance of continents shaped everything from the air we breathe to the mountains we climb. It's a tale of epic forces, of continents ripping apart and crashing together over hundreds of millions of years, written in the very fabric of our planet. And here's the wildest part: Pangea's legacy isn't just locked in the past. The same forces that tore this supercontinent apart are still at work today, quietly reshaping our world beneath our feet. By the time we're done, you'll never look at a map the same way again. So buckle up, we're about to dive into one of Earth's greatest mysteries, a story written in stone, waiting for us to piece it back together. 335 million years ago, Earth looked nothing like the world we know today. Instead of 7 scattered continents, our planet's land was locked in a slow, staggering collision. A tectonic waltz that would eventually bring every major landmass together into one colossal supercontinent. But how did this happen? Picture the Earth's surface not as solid and unchanging, but as a series of giant, floating puzzle pieces, constantly shifting atop a churning layer of molten rock below. These tectonic plates, some carrying entire continents, inched toward one another at speeds slower than human fingernails grow. Yet over millions of years, that imperceptible movement added up to something monumental. The birth of Pangea was a series of dramatic continental collisions, each one folding the Earth's crust like crumpled paper. When the ancient landmass we now call North America slammed into what would become Europe and Africa, the force was so immense it thrust towering mountain ranges skyward. The Appalachians we see today are just the weathered remnants of that titanic clash. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forming supercontinent, another collision was shaping the Ural Mountains, the future border between Europe and Asia. These mountains weren't just geological accidents, they were the stitches holding Pangea together, the scars of a planet reshaping itself. But how do we know all this happened? The Earth keeps receipts. Hidden within rocks are tiny magnetic minerals that act like fossilized compasses, locking in their alignment to the ancient magnetic poles as the stone formed. By studying these records, scientists can trace how continents gradually rotated and drifted over time. Even more telling are the fossils, identical species of plants and animals found on continents now separated by vast oceans. There's no way these creatures could have crossed thousands of miles of open water. The only explanation: these landmasses were once connected, part of the same sprawling supercontinent where life could wander freely from what's now Brazil to West Africa without getting its feet wet. The assembly of Pangea didn't just rearrange the map, it rewrote the rules of life on Earth. As continents merged, inland seas vanished, coastlines shrank, and vast new deserts formed in the supercontinent's heart. Ocean currents shifted, altering global weather patterns, while newly created mountain ranges cast enormous rain shadows, turning lush regions arid. For the plants and animals of the time, it was an ecological upheaval, a world where familiar habitats vanished overnight, geologically speaking, forcing species to adapt, migrate, or perish. The stage was set for one of evolution's greatest acts, the rise of the dinosaurs, who would come to dominate this unified world. And yet, even as Pangea reached its peak, the forces that built it were already at work beneath the surface, preparing to tear it all apart again. At its height, Pangea was a world of extremes. A single unbroken continent so vast it made our modern continents look like scattered islands. Imagine standing at its center, where the nearest coastline might have been thousands of miles away in any direction. This wasn't just geography on a grand scale. It was a planetary experiment in what happens when you cram all the land together and let nature take its course. The supercontinent's heart was a sun-baked desert so immense it would put the Sahara to shame. With no nearby oceans to moderate temperatures, the inland regions swung violently between seasons, blistering summers where the ground cracked under the heat, followed by winters so cold that frost crept across the dunes. Yet even here, life found a way. Reptiles with thick, scaly skin thrived in these harsh conditions. Their bodies adapted to conserve water and endure wild temperature swings. Some developed sails along their backs, possibly to regulate heat or attract mates under that relentless prehistoric sun. Near the edges of Pangea, where moisture from Panthalassa could reach, the story changed. Monsoons drenched the coastal regions, fueling sprawling forests of ferns and early conifers. These were the rainforests of their day, teeming with creatures that would seem both familiar and alien to us now. Dragonflies with wingspans wider than your hand buzzed through the humid air, while lumbering, barrel-shaped reptiles the size of cows rooted through the undergrowth. And among them, a new kind of animal was making its first tentative steps, small, nimble dinosaurs that would one day inherit the Earth. The sheer size of Pangea didn't just create diverse ecosystems, it rewrote the rules of weather itself. Without separate continents to break up wind patterns, air currents raced unimpeded across thousands of miles, carrying dust from inland deserts all the way to the coasts. Storms grew more intense, seasons more pronounced, and the lack of shallow inland seas meant ocean currents flowed differently, creating a planet where climate was less about location and more about sheer endurance. Yet even as life adapted to this unified world, the ground beneath it was already stirring. The same forces that had drawn the continents together were beginning to pull them apart, setting the stage for a breakup that would take millions of years. A slow-motion divorce that would scatter continents, drown coastlines, and ultimately create the world we recognize today. The age of Pangea was a fleeting moment in Earth's history, but its legacy is written into every mountain range, every fossil bed, and even the air we breathe. Even the mightiest empires eventually fall, and Pangea was no exception. 175 million years ago, hairline fractures began spreading through the supercontinent's foundation like cracks in drying clay. The first signs of collapse appeared where the crust was thinnest, as the ancient Tethys Ocean, a vast body of water that once separated northern and southern landmasses, started pushing its way inland. Warm, shallow seas crept into the low-lying valleys between Africa and what would become Europe, dissolving the bonds that held continents together. Meanwhile, far to the west, something even more dramatic was brewing. Deep beneath Pangea's surface, a colossal upwelling of molten rock known as the Central Atlantic Mantle Plume began heating the crust from below, turning solid rock into a slow-boiling pot of magma. The land itself was being pulled apart in a geological tug-of-war. As the mantle plume weakened the crust, enormous rift valleys formed jagged gashes in the Earth's surface that stretched for thousands of miles. Picture the East African Rift Valley today, where the continent is literally tearing itself in two, but on a scale so vast it would make the Grand Canyon look like a scratch. These rifts weren't empty for long. Lava welled up from below, spilling across the landscape in fiery floods that hardened into basalt, sealing the fate of Pangea's unity. The breakup wasn't clean or quick. Like peeling apart two slices of melted cheese, the landmasses separated in fits and starts. First, the northern half, Laurasia, a mashup of future North America, Europe, and Asia, began drifting away from the southern supercontinent of Gondwana, which carried Africa, South America, Australia, Antarctica, and India. The Atlantic Ocean was just a glimmer then, a narrow seaway no wider than a modern river. But over millions of years, that gap would grow into an impassable divide, its spreading seafloor acting like a conveyor belt, carrying continents to their modern positions. What's astonishing is how much of this ancient drama is still visible today. The basalt layers that erupted during the breakup now form the Palisades cliffs along the Hudson River and the dramatic landscapes of Brazil's Serra Geral Mountains. Even the fossils tell the story. Identical freshwater reptiles found in both West Africa and Brazil, stranded on opposite shores as the rift between them widened into an ocean. This wasn't just the end of Pangea, it was the birth of the modern world, a planetary remodel that's still unfolding. The same forces that split the supercontinent are active right now, widening the Atlantic by nearly an inch every year, proof that the Earth's story is far from over. The cracks in Pangea's foundation didn't just split the supercontinent, they created two entirely new worlds, each with its own destiny. To the north, Laurasia stretched across the planet's midsection, a vast expanse of rolling plains and dense forests where early dinosaurs began their rise to dominance. Meanwhile, Gondwana in the south became a land of extremes, a mosaic of steaming rainforests, icy polar reaches, and deserts baked by a sun that never set. These weren't just random chunks of land drifting apart, they were floating arcs carrying entire ecosystems toward wildly different futures. Take Gondwana first. As this southern giant slowly rotated, its heart, what we now call Antarctica, inched toward the South Pole, transforming from a temperate woodland into a frozen realm. Yet just a few thousand miles north, parts of Africa and South America remained draped in rainforests so humid that the air practically dripped. Fossils tell the story. Identical ferns and freshwater reptiles found in Brazil and Nigeria, their shared lineage frozen in stone. Even today, you can see the ghost of Gondwana in the living world. The bizarre, flightless rhees of South America and ostriches of Africa are evolutionary cousins, descendants of birds that once roamed freely across this united landmass before the Atlantic Ocean forced them apart. Laurasia's story was no less dramatic. With Europe and Asia still fused together, this northern supercontinent became a highway for species on the move. Early mammals scurried beneath towering conifers, while dinosaurs like the long-necked sauropods turned vast floodplains into their personal buffets. The fossil record here reveals another clue to Pangea's legacy: coal deposits stretching from Pennsylvania to Poland, formed from the same prehistoric swamps that once spanned Laurasia's soggy lowlands. These seams of black rock are more than just fuel. They're pages from a diary the Earth kept, chronicling an era when today's distant continents were neighbors. What's truly astonishing is how these fragments of Pangea shaped life itself. As Gondwana and Laurasia drifted, their climates diverged, forcing evolution down new paths. Marsupials flourished in Gondwana's isolation, while Laurasia became a nursery for placental mammals. The same forces that tore the world apart also created the diversity we see today, proof that sometimes breaking up is anything but a tragedy. The dance of continents didn't stop with these two giants, though. Hidden beneath their surfaces, the Earth was already stirring, preparing to split them apart all over again. The birth of the Atlantic Ocean wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, fiery rebirth of the planet's surface, unfolding over tens of millions of years. At the heart of this transformation lay the mid-Atlantic ridge, a submerged mountain range running like a jagged scar down the ocean's center. Here, the Earth's crust was literally pulling itself apart, creating a gap where molten rock surged upward to form new seafloor. Picture a zipper slowly opening from below, with each tooth replaced by fresh basalt as the continents on either side inched further apart. This process, called seafloor spreading, didn't just widen the Atlantic, it became the engine driving the modern world into existence. Scientists uncovered one of the most compelling proofs of this process hidden in the ocean floor itself. As magma erupted along the ridge and cooled, iron-rich minerals within the rock locked into alignment with Earth's magnetic field, a field that has flipped polarity countless times over millennia. The result, a striped pattern of magnetic north and south orientations preserved in the seafloor, like a barcode recording the ocean's growth. By reading these stripes, researchers could trace the Atlantic's expansion like rings in a tree trunk, revealing it widens by nearly 2 centimeters every year, roughly the speed your fingernails grow. But the Atlantic's birth did more than rearrange continents, it rewired the planet's climate. Before the rift, ocean currents circled Pangaea in a continuous loop, distributing heat evenly. As the seaway widened, it created a highway for water to flow pole to pole, giving rise to the Gulf Stream. This mighty current became Earth's central heating system, carrying warm tropical waters northward to moderate Europe's winters. Without it, London might have winters as harsh as Moscow's, despite lying at the same latitude. The ripple effects were staggering, newly humid air-fed rainforests, while colder polar waters triggered ice sheet formation, setting the stage for the ice ages to come. Today, the mid-Atlantic ridge remains one of Earth's most geologically active places. Hydrothermal vents along its length spew superheated water packed with minerals, fostering bizarre ecosystems where life thrives without sunlight. These vents are more than just curiosities, they're windows into the primordial forces that continue to reshape our world. The Atlantic is still growing, pushing New York and London further apart each year, a reminder that the ground beneath us is anything but still. The same forces that tore Pangaea apart are still at work, quietly crafting the next chapter of Earth's ever-changing story. The proof of Pangea isn't hidden in some secret vault. It's written across the planet in clues so obvious, once you see them, you can't unsee them. Take the case of Mesosaurus, a small, freshwater reptile that lived 270 million years ago. Its fossils have been found in only 2 places on Earth, Eastern South America and Western Africa. This lizard couldn't swim across an ocean, and there's no land bridge today connecting these continents. The only explanation, these landmasses were once pressed together like pages in a book, with Mesosaurus roaming freely between them before the continents drifted apart. But the fossil record is just one piece of the puzzle. Look at the rocks themselves. The Appalachian Mountains in North America and the Caledonian Mountains in Scotland share identical geological fingerprints. Their layers of sandstone, shale, and volcanic deposits match so precisely it's as if someone tore a geologic map in half and scattered the pieces. Even the minerals within these rocks tell the same story, with rare zircon crystals dating back to the same ancient volcanic events on both sides of the Atlantic. Then there's the ice. 300 million years ago, massive glaciers scraped across parts of South America, Africa, India, and Australia, leaving behind telltale grooves and sediment deposits. But here's the catch: these glacial scars all point outward from a single central location, as if the ice radiated from one frigid hub. Today, these marks are scattered across continents now separated by oceans, their directions making no sense unless you reassemble them into Pangea, where they align perfectly around the supercontinent's southern pole. Alfred Wegener, a German meteorologist, pieced together this evidence in 1912, proposing his then radical theory of continental drift. Scientists mocked him mercilessly. How could entire continents move? Without a mechanism to explain it, his idea was dismissed as fantasy. It wasn't until the 1960s, when the discovery of seafloor spreading revealed Earth's crust was in motion, that Wegener was posthumously vindicated. Perhaps the most poetic proof lies in Antarctica, where coal seams the compressed remains of ancient swamp forests have been found beneath the ice. These layers, identical to coal beds in India and Australia, shouldn't exist in a frozen wasteland. But in Pangaea's time, Antarctica sat further north, its climate warm enough for lush forests to thrive. These are more than just scientific curiosities. They're Earth's own archive, pages of stone and bone waiting to be read by anyone curious enough to look. Pangaea wasn't just a landmass, it was a climatic experiment on a planetary scale. With most of Earth's real estate crammed together, oceans couldn't moderate temperatures like they do today. The result, a world of brutal extremes, where inland regions baked under a relentless sun while coastal zones drowned in seasonal deluges. Picture a place where the difference between summer and winter wasn't just a matter of jackets or shorts, but life and death. In the supercontinent's heart, temperatures could swing 60 degrees Fahrenheit between seasons, with summer heat waves scorching the land and winter nights cold enough to freeze standing water. These wild swings created the largest desert the planet has ever seen, a sprawling wasteland larger than modern-day Asia, where dunes stretched farther than the eye could see. Yet even here, life clung on. Plants evolved waxy coatings and deep roots to tap hidden groundwater, while early reptiles developed leathery skin to prevent moisture loss. Some, like the sail-back dimetrodon, may have used their distinctive fins to regulate body temperature, absorbing morning sun to kickstart their metabolism or angling away to cool down. These weren't just random adaptations, they were survival strategies honed by a world where water was scarcer than gold. Meanwhile, near Pangaea's coasts, the story flipped entirely. Monsoons dumped rain so heavy it would make modern hurricanes seem like light showers. Fossilized ripple marks in ancient mudstones reveal cycles of flooding and drought, with river systems swelling to 10 times their dry season size. These seasonal deluges fed vast wetlands where towering club mosses and early conifers thrived, creating the coal deposits we mine today. But the real surprise: these coastal forests were nurseries for evolutionary innovation. Amphibians perfected the leap from water to land here, while early dinosaurs experimented with new body plans that would later let them dominate the planet. The poles held their own mysteries. Unlike today's frozen wastelands, Pangaea's polar regions often swung between icy tundra and temperate woodland as atmospheric carbon dioxide levels fluctuated. Glacial deposits in modern-day South Africa and Australia tell of ice sheets that advanced and retreated like slow-motion tides, while fossilized tree rings from Antarctica reveal periods when trees grew rapidly during brief, warm summers. This wasn't just ancient weather, it was a preview of climate change's long-term impacts, showing how even small shifts in greenhouse gases could flip entire ecosystems between states. What makes Pangaea's climate so fascinating to modern scientists isn't just its extremes, it's the parallels to our warming world. The supercontinent's vast deserts mirror predictions for the American Southwest as groundwater dwindles, while its erratic monsoons preview the intensified rainfall expected in tropical regions. Even the evolutionary responses offer clues. Reptiles flourished in Pangaea's droughts, suggesting warm-blooded mammals might face greater challenges in a hotter future. By studying this ancient world, we're not just uncovering Earth's past, we're reading a survival guide written in stone and bone, one that's becoming more relevant with every degree the thermometer climbs. Life on Pangaea was a grand evolutionary stage where nature conducted its wildest experiments. Imagine a world where 20-foot-long millipedes crawled through swampy forests, where apex predators with sail-like spines patrolled sun-baked deserts, and where the very first creatures to conquer the skies took wing. This wasn't some alien planet. It was Earth during the supercontinent's reign, a time when life was testing the limits of what was possible. Take Dimetrodon, the most famous of Pangaea's oddities. With its massive sail rising from its back like a prehistoric solar panel, this creature wasn't actually a dinosaur. It was more closely related to mammals than to tea. Rex or Triceratops, scientists believe that sail may have helped regulate body temperature, absorbing sunlight to warm its cold-blooded body at dawn and releasing heat during the scorching midday sun. Nearby, another evolutionary marvel was taking shape, the first flying reptiles. These early pterosaurs didn't just glide, they flapped leathery wings, mastering the skies 50 million years before birds even existed. The supercontinent's vast, unbroken landscapes acted like a superhighway for species. Plants and animals could spread from what's now South Africa to Brazil without encountering a single ocean barrier. Fossil records show identical ferns in India and Antarctica, matching amphibian species in North America and Europe, proof that life moved freely across Pangaea's connected ecosystems. But this unity wouldn't last. As the continents began their slow divorce, populations became isolated, evolving separately. The ancestors of today's kangaroos and elephants, once neighbors, found themselves stranded on drifting landmasses, their evolutionary paths diverging forever. Yet Pangaea's story isn't just about life thriving. It's about life surviving against impossible odds. 252 million years ago, the planet suffered the Permian-Triassic extinction, the deadliest mass die-off in Earth's history. Volcanic eruptions in modern-day Siberia spewed enough lava to bury the United States half a mile deep, while toxic gases turned oceans acidic and choked the skies. 96% of marine species and 70% of land vertebrates vanished. But from this devastation emerged an unlikely winner, the dinosaurs. With most competitors gone, these once small reptiles exploded in size and diversity, setting the stage for their eventual domination. Pangaea was more than just a landmass, it was a pressure cooker for evolution, where extreme climates and catastrophic events forced life to adapt or perish. The legacy of that ancient world lives on in every mammal's tooth, every bird's wing, and even in the genetic code we carry ourselves. The supercontinent didn't just host life's experiments, it shaped the blueprint for the modern world. The ground beneath Pangaea didn't just crack, it erupted in flames. While the supercontinent's breakup was a slow process geologically speaking, its most dramatic moments were written in fire and ash. Across the ancient landscape, titanic volcanic events unleashed chaos on a scale we can barely imagine today. The Siberian Traps, a vast region of basalt lava, flows in modern-day Russia, became ground zero for catastrophe. Over the course of 600,000 years, a blink of an eye in Earth's timeline, these volcanoes spewed enough lava to bury the continental United States under half a mile of molten rock. But the lava was just the beginning. The real devastation came from what those eruptions pumped into the air. Sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide flooded the atmosphere in quantities that make modern industrial emissions look trivial. Acid rain scorched forests, turning lush landscapes into barren wastelands. Meanwhile, the CO2 triggered runaway global warming, spiking temperatures by as much as 10 degrees Celsius. Oceans turned acidic, dissolving the shells of marine creatures and suffocating entire ecosystems. This wasn't just an extinction event, it was the Great Dying, the closest life has ever come to being wiped off the planet. 96% of marine species and 70% of land vertebrates vanished, leaving behind eerie fossil beds where entire branches of the evolutionary tree were snipped off in one brutal stroke. Yet even as the Siberian traps reshaped life on Earth, another volcanic powerhouse was reshaping the land itself. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, a fracture zone stretching from Brazil to West Africa, became the surgical tool that pried Pangea apart. Here, the eruptions weren't explosive, they were relentless. Imagine curtains of lava hundreds of miles wide oozing from fissures in the ground, creeping across the landscape like slow-motion tidal waves of fire. These flows didn't just cover the land, they rewrote it. As fresh basalt cooled, it formed new crust, pushing North America and Africa further apart centimeter by centimeter. The Atlantic Ocean's birth certificate is written in these blackened rock layers, which now form the foundations of the Hudson River's Palisades and the dramatic cliffs of Brazil's Serra Geral. What's astonishing is how these ancient eruptions left fingerprints we can still detect today. Trapped within the basalt are tiny bubbles of prehistoric atmosphere, time capsules preserving samples of Pangea's air. By analyzing them, scientists have found evidence of oxygen levels plummeting as wildfires consumed the supercontinent's forests. Even the rocks themselves tell a story. Rare isotopes of mercury found in sediments worldwide match the chemical signature of the Siberian traps, proving their global reach. These aren't just geological curiosities, they're warnings etched in stone. The same processes that cooked Pangea's climate are happening now, just on a human timescale rather than a geological one. Volcanoes didn't just break Pangea, they set the stage for everything that followed. The carbon dioxide that nearly ended life also fertilized the planet's recovery, fueling explosions of new species in the Triassic period. Lava flows that scorched the land became fertile soil for future forests. Even the rifts that tore continents apart created new coastlines and shallow seas where life could diversify. It's a paradox written into Earth's DNA. Destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin. The same fires that nearly snuffed out life also cleared the way for dinosaurs, mammals, and eventually us. Pangea may have hogged the spotlight, but the real action was happening just offshore in Pangaea, the greatest ocean Earth has ever known. This wasn't just any body of water. It was a planet-spanning colossus, covering nearly 70% of the globe with depths that would dwarf the Mariana Trench. While Pangea's land creatures battled extreme climates, Pangaea's waters teemed with life so bizarre it makes modern sea life seem tame. Picture schools of helicoprian sharks with spiral saws for teeth, ammonites the size of tractor tires jetting through the water, and coral reefs built by organisms long since extinct. But Pangaea wasn't alone. Wedged between Pangea's northern and southern halves lay the Tethys Ocean, a tropical seaway as different from Pangaea as a bathtub is from the open ocean. Think of it as Pangea's private swimming pool, a shallow, warm paradise where sunlight reached the seabed, nurturing reefs that would one day become the limestone Alps. Fossilized clam shells from Tethys tell a surprising story. Their growth rings reveal seasons as consistent as a metronome, proof that this ocean was a climate stabilizer in a world of extremes. The real magic happened beneath the waves, with Pangea acting like a giant boulder in Earth's bathtub. Ocean currents couldn't circulate as they do today. Instead of flowing pole to pole, waters swirled in massive gyres trapped against the supercontinent's shores. These swirling currents created oceanic deserts, vast stretches where nutrients never rose from the depths, leaving surface waters as barren as Pangea's inland wastes. Yet in other regions, upwelling currents fed explosions of life so dense they turned the water opaque with plankton. marine life responded with evolutionary fireworks. Ammonites, those spiral-shelled icons of the ancient seas, diversified into hundreds of species, each adapted to specific currents and depths. Early sharks experimented with body plans we'd find unrecognizable today, some with flattened teeth for crushing shellfish, others with elongated snouts for probing seabed mud. Even the reefs were alien, built not by modern corals but by sponges and microbial mats that created underwater labyrinths. The legacy of these oceans lives on in unexpected ways. When Panthalass's floor was recycled into Earth's mantle, it took with it clues to Pangea's climate secrets. But fragments remain. The limestone of the Dolomites was once Tethys' seafloor, while California's coast hides ammonite fossils in its cliffs. These waters didn't just shape Pangea's story, they wrote the first draft of our modern oceans, setting patterns of circulation and life that still echo beneath the waves today. When continents collide, the Earth doesn't just shrug, it sculpts. The assembly of Pangea wasn't a gentle coming together. It was a planetary car crash played out in slow motion, with crumpled crust becoming the raw material for mountains that would dwarf the Himalayas. Picture the force required to shove North America into Europe and Africa, a tectonic smash so powerful it didn't just fold the land. It stacked entire regions like pancakes, thrusting rock layers skyward to heights we can barely comprehend today. The Appalachian Mountains, now rounded by millennia of erosion, were once a jagged spine rivaling the Alps, their peaks forged in the furnace of continental collision. But the Appalachians were just one act in this geological drama. On Pangea's eastern flank, another monumental crash was unfolding as Siberia plowed into the landmass that would become Europe. The impact zone, marked today by the Ural Mountains, was Earth's original continental suture, where two landmasses welded together so completely that geologists still debate where one continent ends and the other begins. These mountains weren't merely scenery, they were the supercontinent structural beams, holding Pangea together like the iron rivets in a ship's hull. The rocks tell secrets to those who know how to listen. In the Appalachian foothills, exposed cliff faces reveal textbook-perfect fold swirling patterns where once horizontal layers were compressed into sine waves of stone. Some bends are so tight they resemble crumpled paper, evidence of pressures intense enough to reshape solid rock like clay. Elsewhere, thrust faults slice diagonally through bedrock, showing where entire sections of crust were shoved dozens of miles over their neighbors. These deformations aren't random. They're a coded record of the exact angles and speeds at which continents collided, waiting 300 million years for scientists to decipher them. These mountains did more than rearrange rock, they rewrote the rules of life. As peaks rose, they cast immense range shadows, turning lush lowlands into arid basins. Fossil pollen records show how ancient conifer forests gave way to drought-resistant ferns as Pangea's interior dried out. Meanwhile, the mountains themselves became evolutionary islands, where isolated populations adapted to high-altitude life. Salamanders in what's now the Appalachian Highlands developed compact bodies to conserve heat, while their lowland cousins grew longer and sleeker, early evidence of how geography can bend the arc of evolution. Today, these mountains are ghosts of their former selves. The Urals, once Himalayan in stature, have weathered into gentle ridges. The Appalachians' highest peaks, which may have scraped 20,000 feet, now barely crest 6,000. But their legacy lives on in unexpected ways. The same tectonic forces that built them also buried vast swamp forests, compressing them into the coal seams that powered the Industrial Revolution. Even the soil beneath our feet carries echoes of Pangea. The red clay of Georgia and the limestone caves of Pennsylvania are direct descendants of those ancient collisions, proof that mountains don't just shape landscapes, they shape civilizations. Hidden within every volcanic rock is a secret diary, one that records the Earth's magnetic field at the exact moment the lava cooled. This phenomenon, called paleomagnetism, is like nature's own time capsule, locking snapshots of the planet's past into stone. Picture molten lava erupting onto Pangea's surface 300 million years ago. As it solidifies, tiny magnetic minerals within the rock, like microscopic compass needles, align themselves with Earth's magnetic field, freezing that orientation forever. It's as if each rock contains a fossilized whisper of where North once was. Scientists cracked this code in the mid-20th century, realizing these magnetic signatures could reveal continents' ancient positions. Here's how it works. Earth's magnetic poles aren't fixed, they've flipped hundreds of times, with north becoming south and vice versa. When researchers analyzed basalt layers from different continents, they found matching patterns of these magnetic reversals, but with a twist. The magnetic north recorded in European rocks pointed to a different spot than the north preserved in North American rocks of the same age, the only explanation. These landmasses had moved relative to each other, rotating or drifting over millennia like mismatched puzzle pieces. One of paleomagnetism's most stunning revelations came from India. Rocks there showed magnetic orientations suggesting the subcontinent once sat far south of the equator, its ancient latitude aligning perfectly with Antarctica. Over millions of years, India raced north at speeds topping 15 centimeters per year, geologically speaking, a sprint before slamming into Asia to birth the Himalayas. This wasn't just proof of continental drift, it was a play-by-play replay of Pangea's breakup, written in magnetic hieroglyphs. Today, paleomagnetism still guides our understanding of Earth's restless surface. Ocean floor mapping unveiled zebra-stripe patterns of magnetic reversals symmetrically spreading from mid-ocean ridges, confirming seafloor spreading. Even older rocks tell wilder tales. Some suggest that during Pangea's heyday, magnetic north wandered so dramatically that the sun might have risen in what we'd now call the West. These rocks don't just record history, they challenge our assumptions about how the planet behaves, proving the ground beneath us is anything but static. The next time you see a volcanic cliff or basalt formation, remember, those unassuming stones are more than scenery. They're pages from Earth's grand autobiography, written in a language of magnetism only science has learned to read. And the story they tell is far from over every eruption. Every new layer of rock adds another line to this planetary epic, one that's still being composed beneath our feet. Alfred Wegener wasn't just wrong, he was inconvenient. When the German meteorologist first proposed his continental drift theory in 1912, it wasn't merely dismissed as incomplete, it was ridiculed as geological heresy. Picture a scientific conference where established professors scoffed at his maps showing South America and Africa fitting together like puzzle pieces, where colleagues openly laughed at his fossil evidence of matching plants and animals across oceans. The problem wasn't just that Wegener lacked a mechanism for how continents moved. It was that his idea threatened everything geology had accepted for decades. The resistance went beyond skepticism. Prominent geologists like Edward Berry branded Wegener's work as fairy tale science, while American geologist Roland Chamberlain sneered that it took a certain degree of effrontery to challenge established wisdom. Critics seized on genuine gaps in Wegener's theory, particularly his suggestion that continents plowed through ocean crust like ships through ice, a physical impossibility given the known strength of rocks. But in their zeal to discredit him, they overlooked his mountain of observational evidence. Identical coal seams in Europe and North America, glacial scars in tropical Africa pointing toward long-vanished ice sheets, and Mesosaurus fossils stranded on opposite sides of the Atlantic. Wegener's greatest frustration wasn't the rejection, it was being ignored for who he was. As a meteorologist rather than a trained geologist, he was seen as an outsider trespassing on sacred academic ground. His interdisciplinary approach, combining climatology, paleontology, and geology, was ahead of its time but left him vulnerable to attacks from specialists who dismissed anything outside their narrow fields. Even his meticulous fieldwork in Greenland, where he studied ancient ice cores for climate clues, failed to earn him respect in geology circles, the cruelest twist. Wegener died in 1930 on a Greenland expedition, freezing to death while resupplying a remote weather station, decades before seafloor spreading and plate tectonics would prove him spectacularly right. By the 1960s, when sonar maps revealed mid-ocean ridges spewing fresh crust to push continents apart, Wegener's name was rehabilitated from laughingstock to visionary. Today, every textbook that shows Pangea's jigsaw continents pays silent tribute to the man who saw the truth long before his peers, a reminder that in science, being right isn't always enough. You have to wait for the world to catch up. The ground beneath us is still dancing to Pangea's ancient rhythm. Those same titanic forces that welded continents together and tore them apart haven't stopped. They've just slowed to a pace we can barely perceive. Take the Himalayas, where India's relentless northward march still crumples Asia like a speeding car hitting a concrete barrier. Satellite measurements show these peaks growing nearly 5 centimeters taller every year, a living testament to the fact that Earth's greatest mountains are works in progress. Meanwhile, along the Pacific's ring of fire, volcanic arcs and deep ocean trenches mark where plates are locked in a deadly tango, one diving beneath another in a process called subduction, fueling eruptions from Mount Fuji to Popocatépetl. What's astonishing is how precisely we can now track this planetary waltz. Networks of GPS stations anchored to bedrock reveal that Los Angeles is creeping toward San Francisco at about the speed your fingernails grow, roughly 4 centimeters per year. Over a human lifetime, that's just a few meters, barely noticeable, but stretch that motion across geological time, and it explains why California's coastline will one day kiss Alaska's, just as Africa and South America once nestled together. Even the Atlantic Ocean, born from Pangea's breakup, continues to widen as fresh magma erupts along the mid-Atlantic ridge, adding new seafloor like a conveyor belt running in ultra-slow motion. Some of the most dramatic evidence of our restless planet lies hidden beneath the oceans. Along the East Pacific Rise, hydrothermal vents spew superheated water packed with minerals, creating alien ecosystems where life thrives without sunlight. These underwater chimneys are more than just biological curiosities, they're live broadcasts from Earth's engine room, showing how heat from the planet's interior drives plate movements. Meanwhile, in Iceland, you can literally stand with one foot on the North American plate and the other on Eurasia, watching the gap between them widen during rare volcanic eruptions that rip open the landscape like a zipper. The legacy of Pangea isn't just written in rock, it's etched into human history. Earthquakes along Turkey's North Anatolian Fault, tsunamis triggered by Java's subduction zones, even the geothermal energy powering Icelandic homes, all are reminders that we're living on a planetary construction site. The same forces that built and shattered supercontinents still shape where we build cities, how we mine resources, and when disaster strikes. Our world map isn't fixed, it's a snapshot in an endless reel of continental drift, with the next frame already developing beneath our feet. Pangea was never meant to be forever, just one spectacular act in Earth's endless continental ballet. Scientists now predict our scattered landmasses will reunite in roughly 250 million years, forming a brand new supercontinent called Pangea. Picture this, the Pacific Ocean, currently Earth's largest, gradually shrinking as continents creep toward the North Pole like slow-motion bumper cars. Australia drifts north to nestle against Asia, while Africa completes its long collision with Europe, squeezing the Mediterranean into oblivion. The Atlantic, born from Pangea's breakup, may finally close its watery gates as the Americas reverse course and crunch back into Eurasia. This isn't science fiction, it's the next chapter in a planetary cycle older than dinosaurs. Supercontinents come and go like tides in geological time, assembling and rupturing every 600 million years or so. Before Pangea, there was Rodinia, a landmass that dominated the planet 1 billion years ago. And before that, Kenneland and Columbia, names lost to deep time but etched into ancient rocks. These cycles aren't random, they're driven by the same engine that powered Pangea's drama, mantle convection. Hot plumes of molten rock rise beneath continents, weakening the crust until it fractures, while cooler material sinks at subduction zones, tugging plates along like cosmic conveyor belts. The result is a planetary heartbeat pulsing with a rhythm measured in eons. Climate under a measure would make Pangea's extremes look mild. With continents clustered around the North Pole, ice sheets could sprawl across thousands of miles, reflecting sunlight back into space and chilling the planet. Meanwhile, the equatorial zone might become one vast superocean, its endless waters fueling hypercanes, storms dwarfing modern hurricanes. Life would face challenges eerily familiar to Pangea's inhabitants: searing deserts at the continental heart, monsoons drowning coastal zones, and isolated populations evolving into strange new forms. Evolution, after all, loves a blank canvas, the most mind-bending part. This dance has an expiration date. As the sun grows hotter over billions of years, rising temperatures will eventually halt plate tectonics, freezing Earth's surface in place. The supercontinent cycle will end, leaving whatever land remains as a silent monument to the planet's restless past. Until then, the ground beneath us keeps moving, not just carrying continents, but carrying the legacy of every supercontinent that came before and every one yet to be born. Fossils aren't just remnants of ancient life, they're detective stories waiting to be solved. Take Lystrosaurus, a squat, beaked reptile about the size of a modern pig. At first glance, it seems unremarkable until you realize its bones have been dug up in places that make no sense today: Antarctica, India, South Africa, and even China. This wasn't some globe-trotting adventurer. It was a humble creature that lived in freshwater environments, utterly incapable of crossing oceans, the only logical explanation. These continents were once cheek by jowl, part of Pangea's interconnected landscapes where a Lystrosaurus could waddle from what's now Mumbai to the South Pole without getting its feet wet. Then there's the case of Glossopteris, a tongue-shaped leaf that fossilized in rocks from Australia to South America. These weren't just any plants, they were the dominant trees of Pangea's southern forests, their seeds too heavy to be carried by wind across vast seas. Finding identical leaves on continents now separated by thousands of miles of ocean is like discovering the same signature on divorce papers filed on different continents. It's proof that these landmasses were once a single entity, their botanical fingerprints matching perfectly when you mentally reassemble the supercontinent. But the fossil clues go deeper than individual species. In South Africa and Brazil, paleontologists have uncovered identical layers of rock packed with the same mix of reptiles and amphibians, stacked in the same order. It's as if someone tore a prehistoric ecosystem in half and tossed the pieces to opposite sides of the Atlantic. Even more telling are the trails of ancient worms and burrowing creatures preserved in sandstone, their meandering paths abruptly cut off by modern coastlines, as if the animals simply vanished into thin air. In reality, their tunnels continue just on another continent now drifting away. perhaps the most poetic evidence comes from tiny, unassuming organisms called fusulinids. These rice-shaped marine creatures thrived in shallow seas bordering Pangaea, their delicate shells piling up into limestone deposits. Today, those same limestone layers and the fusulinids within them form the Alps of Europe and the hills of Texas, a silent testament to how Earth's geography has been rewritten over millennia. These fossils do more than prove Pangaea existed. They reveal a world where life moved freely across a unified stage, only to be stranded by the slow-motion drama of continental drift. Every matching bone, leaf, or shell is a timestamp, freezing a moment when today's distant shores were neighbors, and the wildest part, this detective work isn't finished. With each new fossil discovery, we're adding another piece to the puzzle, slowly reconstructing the lost world that set the stage for life as we know it. Long before humans drew borders, nature built its own highways, land bridges that temporarily stitched continents together like loose threads in a quilt. The Bering Land Bridge was one of these fleeting corridors, a 1,000-mile-wide tundra plain that surfaced when Ice Age glaciers locked up ocean water, exposing the seafloor between Siberia and Alaska. This wasn't just a path, it was a bustling ecological freeway. Woolly mammoths trudged eastward into the Americas, while dire wolves and saber-toothed cats prowled west into Asia. Even more surprising, camels, those icons of Arabian deserts, actually evolved in North America before trotting across this bridge to colonize the Old World. Meanwhile, their distant relatives llamas and alpacas stayed behind, becoming South America's signature grazers after the waters rose again. These bridges didn't just move animals, they reshaped entire ecosystems. When the Isthmus of Panama emerged from the sea 3 million years ago, it didn't just connect North and South America, it ignited the great American Biotic Interchange. Armadillos and opossums marched north, while jaguars and tapirs surged south. But this wasn't a peaceful migration, it was an evolutionary arms race. South America's marsupial predators, once rulers of their isolated continent, crumbled under competition from placental carnivores. The result, a biological coup that wiped out entire lineages, leaving behind bones and descendants like the Virginia opossum as silent witnesses. The most dramatic isolation happened when Australia broke free. As Pangaea fragmented, this continent became a floating ark, carrying monotremes and marsupials into splendid isolation. While placental mammals dominated elsewhere, Australia's cut-off ecosystems became evolutionary laboratories. Kangaroos perfected their hops, koalas adapted to toxic eucalyptus, and the Tasmanian devil evolved into a bone-crushing scavenger, all because rising seas snipped their connection to the wider world. Yet these submerged bridges left clues in the genes of living creatures. DNA studies reveal that Amazonian tree frogs share ancestry with West African species, while lemurs in Madagascar mirror their primate cousins in India, genetic handshakes proving these lands were once neighbors. Even today's diseases tell a story. The hepatitis B virus split into distinct strains as humans migrated across Beringia, its mutations mirroring our own dispersal. The next time you see a kangaroo or sip coffee from Panama, remember, you're witnessing the living legacy of Earth's lost highways. These fleeting connections didn't just move life, they made it, forging the bizarre, beautiful tapestry of species we call home. And though the bridges are gone, their imprint lingers in every ecosystem, a reminder that biology's borders are as fluid as the tides that erased them. Pangaea wasn't just a stage for evolution, it was the ultimate pressure cooker, forcing life to adapt or perish on a scale never seen before. With all landmasses fused together, predators could roam unchecked across thousands of miles, creating an arms race that reshaped entire ecosystems. Picture this, a world where the top carnivores weren't just local threats but global superpredators, their hunting strategies refined across continents. The apex hunters of their time, like the saber-toothed gorgonopsids, dominated from what's now South Africa to Russia, their reign made possible by Pangea's open highways. But the supercontinent's vast interior became a double-edged sword. As deserts expanded, swallowing once lush regions, survival demanded radical innovation. Some therapsids, the scaly-skinned ancestors of mammals, developed hidden advantages: fur for insulation, sweat glands to cool their bodies, and even primitive whiskers for navigating dark burrows. These weren't just random tweaks, they were survival kits for a world turning harsher by the millennia. While other creatures succumbed to Pangea's climatic roller coaster, these mammal-like pioneers hunkered down, their adaptations laying the groundwork for our own distant lineage. Then came the breakup, and evolution's rulebook was rewritten overnight. As continents drifted apart, they became floating arcs, each carrying stranded populations toward separate destinies. Isolated on these landmasses, species diverged in spectacular ways. Marsupials in Australia, cut off from placental competitors, evolved into everything from bounding kangaroos to Tasmanian devils. South America's isolation birthed bizarre giants like the car-sized armadillo relative Glyptodon, while Africa became a crucible for primates that would one day walk upright. The real twist: many of these evolutionary experiments were only possible because Pangea had first united, then shattered, the world. Dinosaurs, which had flourished in the supercontinent's uniform climates, found themselves on diverging paths, tyrannosaurs dominating the north, while abelisaurids ruled southern continents. Even plants fractured into distinct lineages, with ancient ferns in Australia taking separate evolutionary turns from their cousins in Asia. Our own story is tangled in this geologic drama. When Pangea split, it spared small, nocturnal mammals from dinosaur domination, giving them isolated niches to weather the asteroid impact that would wipe out their rivals. Every heartbeat, every breath we take today echoes choices made by creatures that adapted to Pangea's extremes, then rode its fragments into a fragmented world. The supercontinent didn't just host life's experiments, it set the timer, flipped the switches, and ultimately scattered the results across the globe like seeds in the wind. Pangea's grip on our imagination rivals its hold on ancient continents. Long before scientists pieced together the supercontinent's existence, storytellers sensed the drama of a world both alien and familiar. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth hinted at this lost unity, with its subterranean seas and prehistoric survivors echoing the real-life fossils that proved continents were once joined. Today, that legacy thrives everywhere, from blockbuster films to cutting-edge virtual reality. Pixar's The Good Dinosaur didn't just animate a dinosaur tale. It recreated Pangea's sprawling river valleys and monsoonal deluges, framing its hero's journey against a geologically accurate backdrop of shifting tectonic plates. But pop culture often bends Pangea to its own needs. In dystopian fiction, the supercontinent becomes a warning, a future where climate change or nuclear war forces humanity back into a single, suffocating landmass. These stories tap into a deep truth. Pangea wasn't just a place, but a planetary experiment in extremes. Documentaries take the opposite approach, using CGI to resurrect its landscapes with forensic precision. One BBC production recreated the supercontinent's vast deserts as a time lapse of cracking mud and wilting ferns, while VR projects like Ancient Earth let users stand on Pangea's shores, watching storms roll in from Panthelas's endless horizon. What makes these portrayals so compelling isn't just their spectacle, it's the questions they raise about our own world. When a sci-fi film depicts Pangea reborn, it's really asking, how would humanity survive without oceans to separate us? When a nature documentary reconstructs its monsoons, it's showing how climate today mirrors patterns from 300 million years ago. Even video games get in on the act. Ark: Survival Evolved drops players onto a Pangea-inspired map where biomes collide abruptly, just as they did in the Supercontinent's heyday. The most fascinating portrayals, though, come from scientists themselves. Paleogeographers now use data from rock magnetism and fossil pollen to build interactive Pangeas, complete with shifting weather systems. One team even simulated the supercontinent's wind patterns, revealing how dust from its central deserts could have circled the globe, a detail that brings its extinct storms to life. These aren't just educational tools, they're time machines, bridging the gap between cold, hard data and the visceral experience of standing on a planet we'd barely recognize. Pangea endures in culture because it's more than geology, it's a mirror. In its reflection, we see our own world's fragility, the forces that shaped us, and the unsettling knowledge that the ground beneath our feet has never been still. Whether as cautionary tale or scientific marvel, the supercontinent reminds us that Earth's greatest stories aren't just buried in rock, they're still being written. Debates about Pangea aren't just academic, they're windows into Earth's deepest mysteries. Take Rodinia, the supercontinent that dominated the planet 1 billion years before Pangea. Some geologists argue this ancient landmass was even more extreme, with its breakup potentially triggering a snowball Earth event that encased the entire planet in ice. Evidence lies in glacial deposits found where they least belong, tropical regions that should have been too warm for ice sheets. The theory goes that when Rodinia fractured, it exposed vast stretches of fresh rock to chemical weathering, sucking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and plunging temperatures catastrophically. But here's the twist: these icy apocalypses may have been life's unlikely salvation. Some microbes evolved antifreeze proteins to survive, while others retreated to hydrothermal vents, setting the stage for the explosion of complex life that followed. Then there's Zealandia, the ghost continent lurking beneath the Pacific. Discovered only in 2017, this submerged landmass, 94% underwater, was once part of Gondwana before tearing away during Pangea's breakup. Its existence forces us to rethink how continents form and fragment. Unlike volcanic islands, Zealandia has continental crust, complete with granite and sedimentary layers matching New Zealand's southern Alps. This isn't just a sunken relic, it's a clue that our maps of ancient Earth might still be missing pieces. One of Pangea's most hotly debated legacies is how life endured its brutal interior. Fossilized burrows in Arizona's petrified forest reveal reptiles digging deep to escape surface temperatures that could hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. But the real survivalists were the Lystrosaur's pig-sized herbivores whose fossils dominate Triassic layers worldwide. Their secret, barrel-shaped bodies for water retention and possibly a hibernation-like state to weather lean seasons. Some paleontologists even suggest these unassuming creatures pioneered something radical: milk production. Scans of their jawbones show grooves resembling those in mammal milk ducts, hinting that Pangea's extremes might have spurred the first steps toward live birth. The supercontinent's breakup sparks its own controversies. Textbook maps show tidy fractures, but seismic imaging reveals a messier truth. Beneath the Atlantic, ancient rift zones zigzag like lightning bolts, suggesting the continents didn't so much drift as shatter. Off Norway's coast, a failed rift called the Viking Graven shows where Europe almost split apart again 20 million years later. These scars remind us that plate tectonics isn't some orderly machine. It's a chaotic, improvisational dance where continents stutter step, reverse course, and sometimes tear open in unexpected ways. Perhaps the biggest unanswered question is whether we're seeing Pangea's full story. Deep in Brazil's interior, magnetic anomalies in 3 billion-year-old rocks hint at a pre-Pangean supercontinent called while zircon crystals in Australia suggest another named Volbara. These fragments are like pages torn from Earth's earliest chapters, waiting for someone to piece them together. Every discovery, from Antarctic fossils to submarine lava flows, adds another line to this planetary epic, proving that even after centuries of study, our planet's past is still full of surprises. Teaching Pangea isn't just about memorizing an ancient map. It's about transporting students back in time to walk alongside dinosaurs on a planet with no Atlantic Ocean. Educators have turned this colossal concept into hands-on adventures, starting with something as simple as scissors and paper. Picture a classroom where kids snip out continent shapes, then slide South America and Africa together like puzzle pieces. That satisfying click when the coastlines align isn't just paper meeting paper. It's the moment a 250 million years of Earth's history snaps into focus. But static cutouts only tell half the story. Today's teachers harness apps that transform tablets into time machines. With a swipe, students watch the breakup unfold in accelerated motion, India racing northward, Australia peeling away from Antarctica, the Atlantic zipping open like a seam. These digital tools do more than animate drift. They reveal forces invisible to the naked eye. Tapping the screen might trigger a simulated earthquake along a mid-ocean ridge or send virtual lava bubbling up through continental cracks, showing how molten rock became the engine of Pangea's destruction. Mnemonics turn abstract names into mental anchors. Phrases like Pangea is a giant jigsaw stick in young minds, but creative teachers take it further. One classroom chants "pull apart, not away" to remember how rift valleys form, while another uses the acronym LOST, landforms, ocean patterns, species travel, temperature swings, to summarize the supercontinent's effects. The goal isn't rote memorization, it's building intuitive hooks that make planetary science feel as familiar as a favorite storybook. The real magic happens when students connect Pangea to their world. A teacher in Texas might have kids compare local limestone fossils to others from Morocco, proving these places were once neighbors. In Scotland, a field trip to the Highlands becomes a treasure hunt for rocks that match Newfoundland's geology. Even snack time turns educational. Oreo cookies demonstrate plate tectonics when students twist the halves to mimic transform faults, watching the creamy mantle ooze. These lessons do more than teach geology. They plant seeds for future discovery. The child who fits continents together today might grow up to analyze mantle plumes or discover the next supercontinent cycle. After all, the scientists who mapped Pangea's remnants were once kids, two wide-eyed students who never stopped wondering how the pieces fit. Pangea didn't just shape our planet, it filled our gas tanks and powered our cities. Those vast coal seams fueling factories during the Industrial Revolution. They're the compressed remains of swamp forests that thrived along Pangea's humid coasts 300 million years ago. Picture towering club mosses and giant horsetails decaying in oxygen-poor waters, their organic matter piling up layer by layer until time and pressure transformed them into the black rock we mine today. What's astonishing is how these coal beds form a perfect geological paper trail. Identical layers appear in Pennsylvania, England, and Poland because these regions were once part of the same steamy lowlands straddling the supercontinent's equator. The real jackpot lies in the fractures where Pangea tore apart. When continents rift, the Earth's crust stretches thin, creating deep basins that become nature's perfect storage tanks. The North Sea oil fields, Nigeria's Niger Delta, and even Texas' Permian Basin all owe their existence to these ancient rupture zones, as Pangea split, sinking rift valleys filled with nutrient-rich sediments, creating ideal conditions for marine plankton to thrive, die, and slowly cook into petroleum over millions of years. Modern geologists essentially follow the breadcrumbs of Pangea's breakup wherever they find matching rift structures on opposite sides of an ocean. There's a good chance oil or gas lurks below. Diamonds tell a more explosive story. These glittering stones are time capsules from Pangea's fiery underworld, forged hundreds of miles down where extreme heat and pressure crystallize carbon. Volcanic eruptions called kimberlite pipes blasted them to the surface like geological elevators, often right as the supercontinent was coming unglued. That's why diamond mines cluster along Pangea's old suture zones. South Africa's Kimberley pipes formed when Africa and South America began separating, while Siberia's Mir mine sits where Asia once collided with another landmass. Even our smartphones carry Pangea's fingerprints. Rare earth elements essential for electronics often concentrate along ancient continental margins. The lithium powering your battery, much of it comes from evaporated seawater in Pangea's inland seas, now preserved in salt flats like Chile's Atacama Desert. Copper deposits from Arizona to Zambia formed when volcanic arcs collided during the supercontinent's assembly, while West Africa's bauxite, the source of aluminum, weathered from rocks exposed when Gondwana broke apart. The most surprising legacy might be gold. Many of the world's richest deposits formed when Pangea's predecessor Rodinia broke up, only to be recycled into mountain ranges during Pangea's formation. California's Mother Lode and South Africa's Witwatersrand goldfields both trace their origins to these tectonic shuffles, proving that Earth doesn't just create wealth, it occasionally concentrates it through continental collisions. Every time we flip a light switch or charge a phone, we're tapping into energy and resources that Pangea spent millions of years preparing, a reminder that our modern world is built on the bones of an ancient one. Pangea's climate wasn't just a historical curiosity, it's a mirror reflecting our planet's possible future. The supercontinent's vast interior, cut off from moderating ocean breezes, swung between scorching droughts and torrential floods with an intensity that makes today's weather extremes seem tame. Scientists poring over ancient rock layers have uncovered startling parallels. Carbon dioxide levels during Pangea's heyday reached nearly 2,000 parts per million, 5 times today's concentrations, while global temperatures averaged 6 degrees Celsius higher than now. Those numbers might sound abstract, but their effects were anything but. Fossilized mud cracks in Utah's canyonlands, some as deep as a human forearm, tell of soils baked bone dry under relentless heat, while coal deposits in Antarctica, once part of Pangea's temperate belt, reveal how far rainforests expanded during hothouse periods. What makes these ancient patterns so urgent? The same feedback loops that amplified Pangea's climate swings are kicking in today. When the supercontinent's inland regions dried out, dust storms carried minerals into the oceans, fertilizing plankton blooms that sucked up CO2, a natural thermostat that eventually cooled the planet. Modern climate models now incorporate this dusty feedback mechanism, but with a troubling twist: human-driven warming is outpacing these natural checks. Pangea's megamonsoons, which dumped a year's worth of rain in weeks, also offer clues. By studying fossilized river channels in Morocco and Nova Scotia, once connected researchers found these deluges followed predictable cycles, a pattern eerily similar to projections for intensified rainfall in our warming world. The most sobering lesson lies in desertification. Pangea's central deserts weren't just vast, they were self-reinforcing. As plants withered, the ground absorbed more heat, creating high-pressure zones that diverted rain clouds away. Satellite images of the Sahara's expansion today show the same ominous process unfolding, with dying vegetation triggering microclimates that push deserts outward. But there's hope in Pangea's story too. The supercontinent's breakup didn't just scatter landmasses, it diversified climates, creating sheltered coasts and new ecosystems where life could rebound. That's the ultimate takeaway. Earth's climate isn't static, but neither are its solutions. By understanding how Pangea's ecosystems adapted or collapsed, we're not just reading a history book. We're decoding a survival guide written in stone, one that's becoming more relevant with every degree the thermometer climbs. Virtual reconstructions have turned Pangea from textbook diagrams into something you can almost reach out and touch. NASA paleogeographic maps are more than colorful illustrations, they're time machines built on petabytes of geological data. By layering satellite measurements with fossil records and ancient magnetic data, scientists have stitched together a digital quilt of the supercontinent, complete with shifting coastlines and erupting volcanoes. Zoom in, and you'll watch the Appalachian Mountains rise in real time as North America collides with Africa, or track monsoons drenching the equator while dust storms swirl over the arid interior. These aren't just pretty animations, they're tools that let researchers test theories about everything from dinosaur migration routes to the origins of Earth's first rainforests. For an even more immersive plunge into the past, VR headsets now transport users onto Pangea's cracked mudflats and beneath its towering conifer forests. One groundbreaking project from the University of Chicago lets you stand knee-deep in a Triassic riverbed, watching a herd of Plateosaurus wade through the shallows as virtual water ripples around your feet. The detail is staggering. Insects buzz through humid air, distant thunderstorms rumble over the horizon, and the soil beneath your avatar's feet matches the iron-rich composition found in fossilized deposits from Arizona to Morocco. Museums are harnessing this tech too. The Smithsonian's Deep Time exhibit uses augmented reality to resurrect the supercontinent's weirdest creatures, projecting a life-size dicynodont, a tusked, beaked proto-mammal, right beside visitors, its scaly hide twitching as it roots through virtual underbrush. Gamers might recognize Pangea from survival titles like Ark. Survival Evolved, where the supercontinent becomes a playground for taming dinosaurs and weathering prehistoric storms. While the geography takes creative liberties, the developers consulted paleontologists to get the ecosystems right. Steamy wetlands teem with dragonflies the size of seagulls, while towering ginkgo trees cast shadows across fern-carpeted valleys. The game's day-night cycle even mimics Pangea's extreme seasons, with blizzards suddenly icing over deserts as the virtual planet tilts on its axis. The most jaw-dropping reconstructions come from 3D fossil scans. Paleontologists now laser map bones and footprints, stitching them into interactive models that reveal how a Coelophysis skeleton flexed as it ran, or how a sprawling early crocodile's jaw could snap shut with 4,000 pounds of force. In Brazil, researchers used drone photogrammetry to recreate an entire prehistoric watering hole from fossilized mud cracks and trampled sediments, proving herds of dicynodonts gathered there during droughts. These aren't just academic exercises, they're reshaping how we understand movement and behavior in extinct animals, turning static museum displays into dynamic glimpses of a living world. What makes these digital recreations so powerful isn't just their realism, it's their ability to collapse time. With a swipe or a click, you can watch Pangea assemble and shatter over millions of years, or follow a single raindrop's journey from a Permian thunderstorm to the bloodstream of a grazing reptile. Technology hasn't just brought the supercontinent back to life, It's given us a front-row seat to Earth's greatest disappearing act. Pangea's story isn't just a chapter in Earth's history, it's the foundation of everything we know today. Those colossal collisions and slow-motion breakups didn't just rearrange rocks, they set the stage for the air we breathe, the mountains we climb, and even the patterns of life itself. Think about it, the coal that powered the Industrial Revolution, the oil that fuels modern cities, the very gold in your jewelry, all of them trace their origins to the supercontinent's fiery birth and messy divorce. But beyond resources, Pangea's legacy lives on in the rhythms of our planet. The same tectonic forces that welded continents together still rumble beneath us, lifting new mountains, birthing volcanic islands, and quietly reshaping coastlines 1 centimeter at a time. What's truly humbling is how fleeting Pangea's unity was in geological terms. The supercontinent held its shape for barely 100 million years, a blink in Earth's 4.5 billion year lifespan. Yet in that short window, it transformed the planet's climate, redirected evolution, and left behind clues that scientists are still deciphering. Those identical fossils on opposite sides of the Atlantic, the magnetic stripes on the ocean floor, even the way ancient wind patterns are preserved in sandstone, they're all pieces of a puzzle that took centuries to assemble. And the most thrilling part, we're still adding to the picture. Every new fossil discovery, every deep-sea drilling sample, every satellite measurement of continental drift brings us closer to understanding how this ancient world shaped our own. So the next time you unfold a map, try seeing it not as a fixed image, but as a single frame in an epic film. The continents you recognize are mid-motion, Africa slowly pivoting northward, Australia inching toward Asia, the Atlantic widening while the Pacific shrinks. In another 250 million years, Earth's landmasses will reunite into a new supercontinent, and the cycle will begin again. It's a reminder that we're just temporary passengers on a planet that's always rewriting its own geography. But here's the beauty of it. By learning Pangea's story, we're not just studying the past, we're glimpsing the future. Those same forces that built and shattered the supercontinent are still at work, quietly crafting the next act in Earth's never-ending geological drama. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the ground beneath your feet whispering its next